I'm a 42-year-old male. I got divorced recently, so I moved out to the rural part of Ohio, where normally there's not much going on. My 17-year-old daughter, Casey, doesn't get along with her mother, so she tries to spend most of the time at my place. Obviously her mother isn't pleased with this, but I just want Casey to be happy. The place I live in is not very special. There are two small bedrooms, a bathroom, a living room, which is connected to the kitchen, and of course, a basement, which I never visit. A few weeks ago, I was watching a scary movie with Casey when we heard what seemed to be a knock. I wasn't sure where it was coming from, but I assumed it was the front door. When I went to check through the peephole, I saw nothing, so I forgot about it and reassured her it was nothing. Maybe a half hour passes and we hear it again, much clearer this time. Casey was now worried and practically demanded me to go check. I wasn't sure if it was coming from the main door this time. It sounded like it came directly from within our walls. Regardless, I checked through the peephole, and again, saw nothing. I reassured Casey and told her that these things happen, and that we shouldn't pay too much attention to it. Nothing else happened that night, or that week. I had practically forgotten about it actually, when a few weeks later, I heard it again. This time I was alone. As Casey was with her mom, I became worried and wondered what it could be. Rats? Can't be. Squeaky wood? Maybe. I chose to ignore it, but only a couple of minutes later, I heard it again. Now I knew this was no coincidence. I also knew it wasn't coming from the front door, it was clearly coming from the basement. I walked towards the basement door slowly and carefully, not wanting to alert any intruder who could be inside. I must have stood there for about 5 minutes, waiting to hear it again so I could barge in and catch the thief or whoever made that noise. Unfortunately, I didn't hear anything. In fact, I didn't hear anything until the night after, when Casey was back. That day, she wasn't in a good mood, so while she was on her phone, I headed over to the shower. Only a few moments after the water hit my skin, I heard her rapidly run towards the bathroom. She didn't even care to knock on the door. She barged in panicking and loudly whispered to me someone was in the basement. Adrenaline started kicking in. I got out of the shower and put on whatever clothes I found so I could go check what was happening as soon as possible. This time there were no more games. As soon as she pointed at the basement, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and immediately opened the door. To my surprise, it was pitch black in there. I asked Casey if I could borrow her phone so I could use the torch and reveal the identity making those noises. We walked down the stairs slowly. Casey was right behind me, practically hugging my back. She was shaking. I was scared too, but I had to protect her. The walk down the stairs felt never-ending, as the tension was quickly building up. When we reached the ground, I flashed the light towards one of the corners. I was petrified. I saw a bunch of towels, bags, cans and bottles splattered on the floor, as if somebody had been living there for weeks. I tried to get nearer to see it all with greater detail, but right there and then, I heard the exact same knock very clearly and loudly to my right. As if it was only a few meters away, I immediately yelled for Casey to run upstairs as I followed. I unlocked the main door and we ran as fast as possible to my car. I drove off before the vehicle could even start. Casey was now practically crying and desperately calling her mother. When we reached the nearest gas station, I rang the police and told them everything. They searched the entire basement and confirmed to me that someone was indeed living there. By the writing on the walls, they concluded whoever that was had been down there for months, long before I moved in. Sadly, they never found anybody, and assumed that person ran away. I only went back once to grab my stuff and move out the very next day. I now live in the city, and everything is back to normal, but it still sends chills down my spine knowing somebody had been living in my basement and I had no idea about it. This happened a few weeks ago. My name is Jonathan. I'm 19. For a couple of years now, I've been navigating the deep web most nights. I don't do anything illegal. I don't buy or consume anything. I just do it for fun. This one night, at around 2 AM, I was at a weird website when I received one of those spam notifications. I accidentally clicked on it and ended up on an even weirder website. It was entirely black, with the exception of a small screen that seemed to be recording something live. After a minute or two, a chat box popped up and there were two people writing in there. One of them, that went by the username CuteBunny6969, was trying to convince the person recording to do something, but I couldn't figure out what it was. The other one in the chat, named SexGod, sent a disturbing picture that I prefer not to describe. I wasn't doing anything other than observing. A few moments after, the screen moved, and now pointed at a couch. The entire room was filled with darkness, and only the light from the computer allowed me to see what was in front of me. Cute Bunny 6969 was insisting, and the person hosting the livestream sent a message mentioning my name. I was confused. Was this a coincidence? Then I realized you could see the number of people seeing the livestream. Apparently there were 4, me included. I decided enough was enough, so I moved my mouse over to the tab to close it, but then, the man hosting the livestream yelled, "Jonathan, don't do it." What the fuck? I thought to myself. How could he see what I was doing? How did he know my name? Could he see me? Cute Bunny 6969 started sending messages in the chat box, laughing at me, and calling me a pussy for wanting to leave. Now I was getting increasingly agitated. I clicked on the mouse in an attempt to close the tab, but somehow I couldn't close it. I tried switching to the other website, but it didn't work. I said fuck it. I tried switching off the computer, but that didn't work either. I was dripping wet in sweat, and then the man in the livestream started laughing hysterically. It wasn't a normal laugh, it felt like pure evil and beyond human. The people in the chat box continued to insult me and mock me. By what I can only call a miracle, the livestream ended abruptly. My computer then switched off immediately before I could do anything else. I was relieved. The nightmare had ended, but I was still in shock as to how he knew my name or what I was doing, but I decided it would be best to move past it. I got into bed and tried falling asleep, but not even a minute later, my computer turned back on. I jumped. I didn't expect that. I went over to my desk to turn it off, but a new tab was open. It was the livestream again. My hands were frozen in fear. The man hosting the livestream was moving, and the camera was shaky. He continued laughing like a freak. There was no one else watching or sending messages. I decided to send one myself. I picked a random username before telling the man to fuck off. He didn't take that well because he stopped moving. Seconds felt like hours. I was worried what he would do next. The man changed angles and started pointing at a window of a house. It was pitch black, so I could hardly tell what was going on. But then I came to the realization of what was happening. He was recording my window. It was my house. It was my room. He was recording me. I slammed shut the computer before I could see anything else and rang the police. I made sure all the windows and doors were properly locked so that psychopath couldn't get inside even if he wanted. Minutes felt eternal. Luckily, the police arrived fairly quickly. They woke my roommate up. I explained the entire situation. They told me not to access those pages again, and if I saw anything similar, I should call them immediately. A policewoman told me that they'll search into it and try to find whoever did that. They still haven't told me anything, but it doesn't matter anymore. I moved back with my parents for a while until I found another apartment. It's still horrifying to me how that man knew my name and the place I lived in, and how he could see everything I did. I guess the moral of the story is, don't play with fire, because you will burn yourself.
This happened some years ago. My name is David. I was 23 at the time. I had just started my first full-time job. I moved to a new apartment closer to the city. It was nothing special, but I liked it. I planned on moving in with my girlfriend, but we broke up just a few days prior. I won't get into personal details though. So the place I work at is only 30 minutes away on foot, and since I don't really go to the gym or work out, I decided it would be decent exercise if I just walked there. On the way there, I had to pass through this parking area which was usually uncomfortably empty. It was quite dark even during the day, and you would rarely see more than 1 or 2 cars. I never thought too much about it. In fact, I rarely even noticed it since I was listening to music anyway. Although this one day things changed. As I was walking back home through this parking area, I realized there was a shadow behind me. It was still clearly daylight, so I had nothing to really worry about, since all scary things happen at night. I turned around wondering if anyone needed help. But then I noticed a figure, standing awkwardly far away. I don't know how to describe it. It's as if the shadow was too close to me for the person to be that far away. I pulled out one of my AirPods and asked if they needed help. The figure was standing in the area where the light just about didn't hit, so I struggled to tell if it was a female or a male. At first I thought it must have been a woman due to their long hair, but as I carefully approached the figure, I came to the conclusion that it was a man by their height. He seemed well built. Definitely not someone you wanted to mess with. Although I couldn't exactly tell where he was looking at. So I asked, "Do you need help?" No response. By then I was feeling more embarrassed than scared, thinking the man was probably just doing his own thing. I figured I'd just head back home and call it a day. That night was just as normal as any other. I watched some sports, ordered some pizza and crashed to bed. However, it would be the following day where things would take a sinister turn. On my way to work, I noticed that just as I was passing through that empty parking area there was a shadow behind me. It was very similar to the one from the day before, but not exactly the same one. This time when I turned around I could instantly see a man standing in the dark corner. Due to the lack of lighting in the part where he stood, I couldn't make out any of his facial features, but this time I was 100% sure he was facing me. He seemed distant but also threatening, like he was marking his own territory, making sure I wouldn't come near it. He definitely achieved that, because I was out of there in seconds. Right then a lot of theories were popping up in my head. Was this the same person from last time? I had no idea, but I desperately wanted to avoid that spot. Unfortunately, by the time I had to go back home I didn't have the time to design a new route, which meant I had to cross that creepy parking area again. As I did, I took my AirPods off and locked my eyes on the dark corner which the daylight didn't even reach. At first I didn't see anything, but as I got closer, I realized what I was looking at. There were two, well-built and athletic-looking guys standing side by side, facing me directly. I couldn't make out their facial features, but one of them had long hair. They were staring right at me. I continued walking while looking back at them. I was incredibly intimidated in that moment, and knew that if they wanted to attack me I stood no chance. Stupidly, I made the dumb mistake of asking them if they were alright. There was an awkward pause of nothingness, but by the time I was already leaving the parking area, I heard a can being kicked behind me. As I turned, I was petrified to see both men running rapidly towards me. Adrenaline rushed through my veins which gave me the energy to get out of there and onto a populated street in less than a minute. Luckily the men didn't follow me for long, because they were nowhere to be seen. I assumed they were lunatics, that either wanted to rob me or much worse, kill me. I called the police and told them all about it. Unfortunately there was nothing they could do because I never saw the faces of the two men, so there was no way they could identify them. I changed my route that night so I would never go back to that empty parking area, or any place nearby. I wish I could say the story ended there, but it didn't. That night I was at my apartment just listening to music and relaxing after a long day. I had dinner, showered, watched some TV and went to bed at around 11 or 12. I was pretty tired, so it didn't take me longer than a minute to fall asleep. I woke up a few hours later though. I wasn't exactly sure why, but something in my bedroom didn't feel right. I checked my watch and it marked 2:36 in the morning. That's weird, I thought to myself. I tried to go back to sleep, but as soon as I rested my head on the pillow, I heard something in the closet. That's when my heart started beating twice as fast as it should. It was an unusual sound, one of those you would make accidentally. Something was wrong. I was too scared to even move from my bed. In those few minutes I laid there, I probably came up with a million possibilities of what could have caused it. I wanted to go back to sleep, but I was so anxious I knew I couldn't even if I tried. There was only one way to calm me down, and that was to check what made that sound in the closet. I built up some confidence to get up and walk towards my closet. Seconds felt like minutes. By the time I was in front of it, I put my hand on the doorknob and quickly pulled it open. I saw two men, crouched down, staring right at me. Both of them with black masks covering their entire faces. I ran out of my room and out of my house as quickly as a human possibly could, not looking back once. I knocked on every door from every neighbor, screaming like a maniac. I managed to get help from one of them, who let me into their house and called the police for me. There was no sign of the two men, as I don't believe they followed me. I waited in my neighbor's house for at least 10 minutes, before the cops finally showed up. I explained everything, and they searched my entire apartment. They found absolutely nobody inside. Apparently nothing was stolen either. The police concluded that the men got in through my bedroom window, which was apparently unlocked. I insisted that they were likely the men from the parking area, although the police couldn't verify nor confirm this in any way. Knowing those men were inside my closet for possibly hours made me sick, so I moved out the next morning. I didn't even sleep that night. I quit my job shortly after too. Since then, I've never had another horrifying experience or anything of that sense. The only reason I'm writing this now, is because only a few days ago, I read in a news outlet about a man who had been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of a young couple and their child after breaking into their home. He had the exact same long hair and body type as the man I saw in that parking area, who I assume was also the one in my closet. I can't verify this, but my gut tells me they are indeed the same person, which only makes me wonder what would have happened to me if I didn't wake up that night.
My name is Zeke. I was 16 when this happened. It was during the summer break. My older brother and I were fooling around one night in his car. Not doing anything illegal, of course. Just drinking some beer and listening to music. I know looking back at it, it was highly irresponsible, but we had a lot of fun. We were low on gas, so we stopped at the nearest station. My brother, who was the most sober of the two, got out of the car to refuel. I decided to head to the store inside the gas station. I'd figure I'd buy a chocolate bar or something. It was weirdly empty. Like not a soul inside. I rang one of the bells and quickly a skinny man came out. I'm not gonna lie, he looked like a drug addict. His hair was long but messy, covering some of his face, and his eyes were red. Not to mention his smile was also creepy. I gave him the chocolate bar, trying to avoid any conversation with this weirdo. I told him to keep the change and got out of there. But as I was leaving, I saw how he slowly walked back onto another room, making sure no one followed him. I got curious, and returned to the store to see what he was doing. I tried to be as silent as possible, and when I got to the counter, I saw a door half open leading to a room with a red light on. Now I was skeptical. I slowly approached the room and pushed the door open, revealing a set of stairs that must have led to some basement or something. I steadily walked down the stairs, surprisingly not making a single sound. But when I reached the other room it led to, I was horrified. There was a corpse, hanging from the ceiling. I felt like vomiting right there and then, but I pulled myself together and ran up the stairs, out of the store and into the car, where my brother was waiting. He was obviously shocked by the way I was acting. I told him to drive out of there immediately while I explained what happened. He didn't believe it at first, but I guess my heavy breathing and wide open eyes convinced him it was true. I insisted on calling the police, but he said it was too risky, as he was driving while drinking. So we never did. And I never found out who that man was or what the hell happened down there, but I still get nightmares from the whole experience.